Oh, he got it.
Hi, everybody. We're so glad you're here. I talked to a couple of you guys on the phone today, so I know you've been waiting for the webinar. It's officially started. I'm so excited. We've got Luke Dray,
Hey everyone.
partner and pro extraordinaire, right? Just returned from the Grand
Grand
Canyon
Canyon.
workshop.
Yeah.
And then we've got the man of the hour, DT, David Thompson. We're so excited to have you.
Jess and Luke, thanks for having me on. Hello, everybody that's out there watching this. I hope you guys enjoy the webinar, and hopefully we can show you guys some cool stuff with these images. You guys can learn a thing or two, maybe.
We're seeing
I
lots of familiar names. I see Andy Partridge up there.
Andy, what's up,
Eric.
Andy?
Yeah. Um,
That's my guy.
loads of names.
I'm guessing because I don't see anybody in the chat. That means you guys don't have the ability to communicate to us. Luke, if you can look into that, that would be great. You'll have to go into the webinar chat. It is Luke's first time running the show. I'm so excited that he's taking control of this. Oh, Bruce just commented. Hi, Bruce and Susie. So glad you guys are here.
Tell Susie I'm still cleaning mud out of my backpack. I don't know if she can hear that. I'm still cleaning the mud out of my backpack from when was that? March or no, was that March or last year? I
Death
can't remember.
Valley? Yeah.
Yeah, Death Valley.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still cleaning the mud out of my backpack.
So funny. Chat is disabled. Thank you, Curtis, for confirming. We'll get that up and going just as soon as we can. I know you guys can see our messages. Oh, Bill Azar. How's it going, buddy?
Wow, there it goes. I got it.
Is it working now? The chat?
I think now everyone can do it.
All right. David, hi.
Working.
Hi,
There we go.
everybody. Woo!
Get there eventually.
There we
Okay.
are.
There we go.
I think we have quorum. I think we can jump in. There's over 200 of you on the webinar, so I think we can dive right in. So, hey everyone, I'm Luke. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we're diving into talking with David Thompson about how he shoots, how he sees the world, and how he edits the world. He's doing a lot of mid-tone contrasts, and it's very, very exciting and interesting work. He's just fresh back from his trip to Namibia. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. As we go, put questions in the chat or in the Q&A about locations, about gear, about editing, and we will try and get to some of them as we progress. Okay. David, in a sentence or two, how would you describe your photographic style for anybody new to your work?
Well, let me just do a quick introduction to maybe some that don't know me. My name is David Thompson. I'm based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, here in the Southwest. Um, I would consider my photography style subtle, maybe understated, um, calm, relaxing, moody, just depending on how I'm feeling. I try to have a gentle hand with my approach when it comes to processing. So, yeah, overall, I would just say it's more subtle and maybe understated. I think that's the best way that I can describe my work.
And I mean, your work has been very, very calming. Can you tell me a little bit about why you wanted to come and work with me into workshops and what excites you most about leading the workshops with us?
Well, well, first off, I got to thank Jess for the solicitation of me joining the team. That was quite a surprise for myself, but such a great opportunity. I have to say, so far, the experience has been great. Just allows me to go out, show people the knowledge that I have and the experience that I've had over almost 20 years of work in the field and photographing a variety of different subjects and having a diverse portfolio. And I would consider myself having the ability to shoot almost any landscape with any kind of conditions, and being able to share that knowledge with the clients has been great. And just, I get inspired when people are out there willing to learn and willing to have an open mind to look outside of the box and take their work to another level.
Yeah, and which workshop you're running a good few workshops in the next year or so. Which ones are you most excited about running?
Whew, I think right now, I think the one that I'm most excited about is getting back to Namibia. The Namibia experience this summer was beautiful. For those that don't know, I spent a month in Namibia leading two back-to-back workshops with Richard Burnaby, which were excellent. Great conditions, awesome landscape, and just right up my alley with a diversity of stuff to photograph. 2026 is going to be the same thing, but we're adding a couple new locations in there. Adding the aerial photography, which is going to be something completely different to that workshop. And there's a couple other stops that we're going to add to that Namibia workshop that's really consisting of all landscape. So there will be very little wildlife in the next one in 2026. But the addition to the aerial photography and the other location that we have added to the itineraries is really going to make that one really stand out.
Okay. And I mean, everybody says this, your work feels very recognizably DT. How do you develop that signature look without copying your friends? Like this sand dune is very, like you can tell it's your picture.
Well, like I tell everybody, Trevor had a comment over there in the chat about the magic is in the midtones, and I've always focused on that midtone contrast just early on with my process. And over the years, I've figured out how to refine that. And really, what it comes down to is just shooting the light that's available there. I let the light kind of dictate how I process. And that goes a long way with how the images look, how they feel, getting the desired look that I want, and just really just working off the light that's available.
And when did small intimate scenes start to click for you? And how did they change your wide angle shots? Because you're quite well known for these very intimate scenes.
Sure, sure. The small scenes started, wow, we're probably going back at least 15 plus years ago. When I first got into photography, I didn't really know anything about small scenes because when I started, it was mainly the big wide landscape. We wanted that big epic light, dramatic skies, God rays, whatever we can get that had to do with just the most epic conditions. Well, over time, I realized that those epic conditions only happen so often. So a lot of times I was going out, I wasn't getting those conditions. So with me not getting those conditions, I had to start looking outside of the box and start thinking about different ways to interpret the landscape. And small scenes was kind of that turning point because of not getting the epic scenes. You go out, you still want to photograph something, right? So instead of focusing on all these images that had sky, all these scenes that had these big, huge, wide scenes and dramatic skies, you don't get the light, you got clear blue skies, we can go to something like this, where we focus on that low, soft light that comes right at sunset or just afterwards.
And what is this? What exactly are we looking at here? This is quite an unusual picture.
So what you're looking at is dried mud. I mean, who knew that mud was going to be such a cool subject to shoot, right? But if it's photographed in, certain kind of conditions, you really can make it stand out. And what we have here is a scene that was taken after sunset when the light was low and soft, and you get that nice soft glow on the landscape, and that's what you have here. And the composition, if you look, has basically multiple triangles within the scene. If you really break it down, there's just all kinds of triangle patterns, within this small scene. What's cool about scenes like this is that you take what you would do with the wide scenes and looking for the same aspects, the same foreground elements, lead-in lines, repeating patterns. You take that and then you bring it to the small scene, right? What ends up happening with the smaller scenes is you start paying attention to more of the details, which you can turn back and put into the wider scene. So you're getting stronger foregrounds and, strong in lead in lines, overlapping layers, contrast and textures, and smoothness within the landscape. So it goes hand in hand both ways. Small scenes can help out big wider scenes, and the wide scenes can help out smaller scenes like this.
But what's so beautiful about these smaller scenes that you don't have to go to the grand landscapes to get them. You can find them in your garden. You can find them
Sure.
anywhere. I
Sure.
mean, yeah, I imagine that was this in Death Valley or somewhere like that. But
Yes, this was.
you can find this cracked mug near enough in any
You can
desert if you look
you
for
can
it.
find this. You can find small scenes everywhere. Believe it or not, you go to my website. I have a couple images on my website where I was driving down the road one day, way far out, southwest side of town, and there was a little puddle. And I visited that puddle just at the stoplight. I parked my car, I got out, and I could tell that there was mud cracks forming. So I'm gonna come back to this puddle in 2 weeks. I came back to the puddle in 2 weeks, right off the side of the road, small patch, maybe 3 feet wide, and some of the coolest mud cracks I've ever photographed. So as long as you're looking and you know what to look for, there's going to be stuff everywhere to photograph. It's just that you have to really open your mind to looking at the landscape, maybe in a smaller form, and pay attention to the details.
No, I mean, there's a really, really nice idea for people to go and shoot at home. Jess, you say we have a question.
Yeah, so for images like this, DT, for some of these close-in shots, do you rely on focus stacking?
That's a great question. Sometimes I do. A lot of times, what ends up happening with scenes like this, regardless of how you shoot it, if you shoot it wider, you shoot it at a mid zoom, you shoot it, telephoto, the center is always going to be sharp. Where you run into the issues is the corners. And when you have scenes like this, you just always want to try to make sure that the edges are nice and sharp as well. So with a scene like this, yes, depending on the distance of how far I'm shooting the subject, yes, I will focus stack.
I hope that answers your question. Okay, so you've spoken a little bit about this already, but you often say let the light dictate and what and how you photograph. What does that look like in the field?
Real easy. It's real simple. Just let the light dictate your subjects and how you process. If you have a dark, moody landscape, just, it's a big wide scene. If you have a nice textured sky, we want to make sure we capture that, right? Now, with that being said, maybe there's not a whole lot of light on the actual landscape. Then we might have to switch stuff up and maybe go to a smaller scene. But it really depends just what the light is doing to the landscape. Every time you go out and shoot, every time you visit a location, the light is always going to be different, regardless what the conditions are, it will be different. But again, let the light dictate how you photograph that scene, whether you need to go small, whether you need to go wide, whether you need to go telephoto, let the light dictate that. And be open to try different things as well. I can't even tell you, sometimes there's been scenes where I didn't think the light was really that great, but I just was like, you know what, let me try something just in case. And it ends up being, kind of nice. So be open, let the light dictate how you see and photograph the landscape and what you do in post.
And how do you coach workshop guests to work the light instead of chasing those forecasts and epic skies?
What I would do is we always break it down. I always like to get to a location and we break it down. What are we seeing? What is the light doing to the landscape? What is the light going to do to the landscape in 10 minutes? What is it going to do in 15 minutes? What is it going to do in half an hour? So we can kind of break down what the light is doing to the landscape, and that will determine how we approach our compositions, how we capture what the landscape is telling us.
And this is a really beautiful picture. I'm not quite sure where it was taken, but what's one exercise you use when you're on a workshop to teach visual flow, so images can guide the viewer's eye?
Yeah, this is great. It's a great question. So this right here, popular location in Iceland, and I think the tendency that we have as photographers sometimes, and I do it sometimes, is we get to a location and we just want to shoot. I've, over the years, just getting a little bit more mature and not rushing out to shoot as soon as I get to a location, walking around, looking at the details, again, studying the light, thinking outside of the box and maybe looking at the landscape a little bit different. Luke, can you go back to that past, there you go, thank you. This is a perfect example. With this particular scene, along with the mud cracks, you can see that there's this repeating patterns of triangles in the scene. So you literally have triangles all through the scene from foreground to midground to the background. And again, this was a scene here that I walked around. I was like, you know what? A lot of times people will go to the beach, they'll shoot the reflections of the mountain, and it looks great. It's an awesome scene. But again, just trying to step outside the box a little bit and look at something a little bit different. This is what you can find when you do that.
I mean, it's a really beautiful picture. Yeah. And then the same with this one, I imagine, as well.
Well, so this image is a little bit different. This is beneath the surface, slot canyons. A lot of people don't have a ton of experience in slot canyons. Shoot, I barely have a lot of experience in slot canyons, but I've been fortunate enough to visit quite a few over the years. And with this image here, it's again, we're talking about that visual flow. So we start our composition from the left and it just kind of swoops around. You have this spiral effect that swoops into all the textured in the middle and going into the glow that's in the center of the frame. Another thing that I like to do when I see scenes like this, or just in general, is I like strong color contrast. So anytime I can have a color contrast or something that deals with light and dark, that's going to give you the quote unquote appearance of more depth. The more depth that you have, it makes the image a little bit more interesting. It gives you a little bit more of that 2 to 3D effect within the scene. What's also nice with that scene there, Luke, if you go back, please.
Oh, back here.
Yes, sir. You have that contrast of light and darks. You got color contrast of like red and like these coolish purples and magentas against smooth and textured walls. So you're getting a lot of depth within the scene.
We've just got a question, Jess, you said.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions. So
Okay, go ahead.
first
Let's do
question
it.
is, do you typically adjust your white balance when out in the field, or do you default to auto?
Yeah, that's awesome question. Whoever asked that, awesome. Look,
Pat Young?
yeah, that's great. So look, I always, and I do show this on the workshops as well, is a lot of times when I'm in the field, I like to adjust my white balance to what I'm seeing. Going to an auto white balance does work sometimes, but a lot of times it doesn't capture that full dynamic range of colors. So sometimes you have to play with the white balance just to get it correct in the field, just to have a starting point. I prefer my colors to have a good starting point. So when we go into post, then we can jump into those mid-tone contrasts and let the mid-tone contrast do all the heavy lifting for me.
Awesome. So next question, with a foreground, midground, and the far, where do you focus?
Look at you guys. You guys are coming with the great questions. This image here is a perfect example of that. This image here, one frame, one focus point. My focus point would have been about 3/4 of the way into the scene, Luke. So if you got your little arrow, yeah, I would say right about a little bit further up. So about right there.
Around the tree.
Just before that, but that's at f/16, sharpness front to back all the way. Now let's talk about the visual flow here. We have good foreground, lead-in lines going into the scene, right? We have the tree on the left, we got bushes on the right to create balance, and then we got the tall mountains in the background to completely balance that whole scene out. We were fortunate enough that morning to get really misty and foggy conditions. This was taken in the Colombian jungle. Excellent conditions, moody, and again, this is a perfect example. We don't necessarily have a ton of light here. The light is somewhat flat, which is fine because it's atmospheric. So we don't need to have like all this blazing light to create depth, right? Instead, we're letting atmosphere create our depth. So if you look, we have that contrast in the foreground, fading off into the background, and you can see in the background, there's very, very, very low contrast, if any. But that's what's creating that depth. That's giving you that 2 to 3D dimension in space within the scene.
What I love about this photo as well is you haven't got any tangents, right? So this tree,
Yes.
it's completely framed by this mountain here, and this tree, the top of this shrub is not touching here. That
Yes.
it really, really, really helps this picture. It's beautiful, and that's so important in photography, guys.
Yeah.
Is having
And
tangents.
that's a great point too, Luke. And here's the thing. So with that scene, some people will have the tendency to shoot the scene lower, right? You go lower, wider. Now, keep in mind, if you go lower and wider, all the stuff that you talked about with the tangent is going to push everything up above the horizon. So you go too low, you're going to push that center tree up to the top and that middle notch. That tree on the left is going to be pushed up and is going to give close to the hill on the left-hand side. So you want to give yourself still that breathing room within the scene.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Going back, sorry, to the slot canyon image, Brad Wilkins wants to know, did you color grade the slot image?
So this was taken with multiple exposures. One exposure is going to be for the glow. When I shoot slot canyons, like if the image does not have that nice orange, yellowish glow at the top, I don't even bother with it. So one image for our highlights, which is going to be our orange glow. Second image is going to be for our cooler tones in the shadows, and blended that together using multiple mask, shadows and highlight mask in Photoshop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your own photography has spanned everything from deserts to coasts and rainforests. How do you use that diversity to push your workshop guests?
Again, experience. Having the experience of shooting all these, amazing places and just having the diversity. Believe it or not, all the concepts that you apply, like with this image here, can apply to a rainforest, it can apply to the coast. It's the same concepts, you're just putting it in a different application. Again, we're letting the light dictate how we photograph the landscape. This was taken on our Wild Death Valley workshop earlier this year. This was a scene that Andy and I sat and waited, and I was telling them, I was like, look, this is what's going to happen. The light is going to slowly creep over the left side of that mountain. And what's going to happen is you're going to get partial lit up dunes. Now, what's cool is you have that nice hard contrast that I was telling you guys about earlier, that you can use those dark and light areas to create your composition and to create that depth. And what we have here is the light creating our S-curve into the scene. What's really nice is that you have the dark background that really makes it stand out and makes it pop. If that dark background was not as dark as it was, or it's brighter, if you made it brighter in post, that light is not going to stand out. I like to tell people, when we're teaching, where there's darkness, there's light. And don't be afraid to go a little bit darker in your scenes to make light stand out. It really goes a long way.
That's a really beautiful statement. What's one edit that moves a flat, clean dune from meh to like intentional simplicity like this?
Mid-tone contrast, work on those midtones. A lot of our guests and clients are Lightroom users. There seems to be a pretty common theme that people ignore the tone curve and the lights. I can't stress it enough. The light slider alone in that tone curve gets everything going in the image. That's the one adjustment that I will always suggest to anybody listening to this webinar. Tone curve, light slider, don't be afraid to push it. It goes a long way.
Got a very quick question, David. What is your definition of the mid-tone contrasts? How are you defining it?
The midtones will be anything that's in the middle of the histogram. That's where all your information is at. That's where all the good stuff is at. Your color is going to be there. The grayscale of the images. That's where all the good information is at. And if you can learn how to work those midtones, it makes your images go a really long way.
So would you say it would be around here, this sort of area here in this picture?
I would say that's a good starting point. Yes, that would be around where the midtones would be at. Yes.
So many you go to a forest like this, many students fear coming home empty-handed. How do you teach them to embrace failure as part of your growth?
Failure. That's a great word, and I think that it's something that we all should embrace, especially when it comes to photography. Photography is hard. It's an art, and it takes time. Even still to this day, I struggle with compositions and scenes to some degree. But it's a good takeoff point to look at where you might have made a mistake in the field. And then when you go back out into the field, being able to correct that. And this goes for even, composition, your light, being too close to the subject, maybe not getting close enough, maybe using a telephoto lens instead of the mid zoom, focus stacking when you probably should have and you didn't. That's all part of the process. And sometimes you just kind of have to have like this mental checklist when you get into the field and say, hey, what exactly do I want to capture here? What is my subject? How do I want to make that come to life? I think that's really important also, like with a scene like this, being able to pre-visualize the direction of where you want to take the image. That also helps, when you get to the computer for post-processing. So having an idea where you want to go with the image, what's your subject, and how do you want it to feel? What expressions are you feeling when you capture the scene? I think all that ties into good imagery.
We have a
Pete,
question.
yeah.
Sorry, Jess.
It's okay. It's okay. So I actually have two things that I would like to highlight in this moment. So one question, and that is, do you find adjusting the midtones with the tone curve better than the light slider?
Yes, absolutely. So anybody, again, whoever's watching this, you guys can just take a, image side by side or the same image and push the lights and then push the white slider and you can see the difference. The white slider, it has a tendency to add a lot of contrast, sometimes too much contrast. And it does get some of those subtle details in the highlights, in those midtones to really pop, but sometimes it's too much. With the tone curve and the light slider, it's a lot more subtle. It's powerful, but subtle. And you guys can see the difference. The contrast isn't in your face, it's real subtle. And what ends up happening is those highlights that are in those midtones, they tend not to get clipped. So as soon as you push those white slider, you have to be really careful with that. Sometimes if I shoot a scene and there's really bright highlights, sometimes I'll just back completely off on the white slider, just so I have that extra room with the lights to be able to make that counterbalance in those midtones.
There's one thing that I really love about doing the same workshop with different instructors. So I've done the Death Valley workshop twice, and I did it with different instructors each time. And the second time I did it with David Thompson. And I learned something different in being with David Thompson, and that is composition. I learned things different. And what I love about this image is that you've taken it and you took it and framed it this way for a specific reason. So there is a comment that is just sent to us that I would love for you to highlight. Somebody said that they would crop off the sides just outside of the two main trees.
Sure.
So I'd love for you to share why you actually have the additional trees, because it's such a valuable thing for people to hear.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, and it's funny because I actually have two versions of this. I do have a crop version of this, and I'll be more than happy to share that with whoever asks. I think what ended up happening here is there was two things. So one, I do agree that there could be an additional crop on that left side. But with that being said, the other thing that I liked is the balance of the trees on the left and right. If you notice, there's more of a diagonal that goes out to the left, and you have a diagonal that goes out to the right. Um, Obviously framing our mother alien in the background. So at the time, yes, I was just thinking about the diagonals and the balance of the scene. I'm definitely not opposed to the crop because I did do a crop version of this. So yeah, I think for the training purposes and the purposes of this webinar, a lot of the images that I did were all wide scenes, and just so everybody can get the whole entire view of what was being seen there.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've talked a lot about midtone contrast.
Yes.
Another thing in your work is the color cast. How do you tackle color cast and ensure that you have this clean color separation?
Wow, this is such an important thing, and anybody that's attended our workshops that's done any kind of processes with me, or just any of my guests, clients that I've worked with, this is the first thing that I always talk about is color separation and color cast. As you can see here, this kind of give you a quick breakdown of what the light was doing here on this particular day. This was late afternoon, Colorado, fall colors. There's this huge puddle of water, and you have all these leaves inside this puddle of water. The light was, and it was flat light, it was in the shade. There's no direct light hitting the scene at all. But our cameras want to capture the whole spectrum of colors that's within the scene. And this was one example here where I had the image, my white balance at cloudy, and cloudy is going to pick up more warm colors, which you see here. Now, the image on the right is one simple adjustment in the white balance in Lightroom, and you can see now we have all the colors separated throughout the scene. You can see that there's different shades of yellows, different shades of golds, different shades of red. We don't see that on the left side. All the tones within the scene are all the same. I think it's really important that color correction is done at the beginning of the processing and not try to be corrected towards the end. Because if you start off too warm with the image on the left, you get to add in contrast, vibrance, saturation, whatever adjustments you do, you're just gonna add on to that color cast. And it's gonna be much harder to tackle at the end of the process and versus doing it at the very beginning. In fact, I have the tendency to tell people to start off a lot cooler with their images, because building warmth into an image like this is easy. That's easy. But if it starts off too warm, then trying to correct it and cool it off is going to be a problem. As you can see here, you look at the histogram. This is one of the things that I talk about a lot too, is you look at the histogram. A lot of people think about the histogram for the exposure and make sure you have a clean exposure in the field, and that's great, and you should do that. But what we don't do is we don't look at the histogram and look at the channels when we get to post-processing. I can tell from this image here, straight out of camera, you can see it's just a straight raw, no adjustments. That red channel is completely pushed to the right. So that's automatically gonna tell me that I have a strong yellow red cast to the image. You flip to the next image, Luke.
There we go. Sorry, I was just putting something in the chat so everyone knew
You're good.
in progress.
And so now you can see, look at the histogram now. The histogram now, that red channel is now pushed more to the left. And you can see that we have a lot more color separation. So if you just kind of toggle between the two, Luke, so people can see the before and after, you guys just take a look at that histogram. You guys can see where that color cast is at.
Perfect. And can you unpack your midtone contrast philosophy a bit? You've mentioned it a lot, but what is your reason behind it? And why do you prefer it over other methods?
Well, I mean, so let's go back to the previous image real quick, Luke. Just like right here, this is a good example. If you start off with too much of a cast, anytime you start doing those mid-tone adjustments, as I said earlier, you're going to add on to the color cast. Coming out with more of a neutral image like this, it gives us a lot more room to play and spread those colors out throughout the scene. And, we can make those colors just come to life off of one or two adjustments. We don't even need to play with the color if we don't want to. But if you go to the next image, the Death Valley one at Artisan's Palette, the image on the left again started off with a color cast, neutralized it, took the cast out. Now you can see that there's a lot more color separation in the colors. Those midtones, that's where all your information is at. So us getting rid of that color cast allows us to really push the natural colors there that really bring the depth within the image. Midtone contrast for me, Luke, is basic levels adjustments and slowly building up midtone contrast with multiple layers of those level adjustments. So we're pushing those highlights a little bit and we're bringing those midtones down just a little bit. And as we keep on doing that, we come up with an image that we have here that you're showing on the screen here. No color adjustments here at all, just all midtone contrast adjustments. And I think it's a pretty powerful tool in how you can process and where you can take the image.
We just had a quick question about your use of a camera raw over Lightroom. Can you just speak to the differences and why you use one over the other?
Camera raw for me, this is just a lot more intuitive. It's the same concept, same engine as Lightroom, but I just prefer the simplicity of camera raw. It's not real fiddly, and I find Lightroom to be a little fiddly when it comes to some of the adjustment sliders and some of the things that you can do there. But everybody has their preference on how they like the process and that kind of thing. So it's just easier for me.
And some people like the catalog settings, and you can't have the catalog in camera raw.
Well, you use Adobe Bridge. You just use Bridge for your storage, and with Bridge you can just manually make all your catalogs. So it's basically the same thing as Lightroom, but you do it manually, and then you don't have to worry about everything loading up and transferring, libraries and all that other stuff. I guess I'm old school because when we learned Photoshop, we learned with we had Camera Raw and Bridge as our storage and work engine. So that's just kind of where I've started, and I've just kind of stuck with that just because it's easier.
Bruce, just in answer to your question about removing the warm color cast, it's on the white balance settings over here.
White balance settings, yes.
There's another question about this image, just since we're on it. The color adjustment on the leaves, was that just done with the temperature and tint, or are there any per channel tone curve adjustments?
No, a good starting point is just with the white balance, the temperature and tint. It goes a long way. I mean, you can, and I just manually adjusted. I just did it by eye. Sometimes you can just hit auto, and auto will do a pretty good job of adjusting it. But sometimes what it tends to do is it wants to completely neutralize it and completely get rid of the color cast and make it neutral gray. I will say this with those color casts, I think the biggest thing with the color cast is management. It's just how you manage it throughout your image, because some scenes you're just not going to be able to get rid of a cast, because if you have like strong afternoon light, this scene is going to have a lot of yellow in it, and you're not going to be able to get rid of all of the yellow, but there's ways that you can manage it. So for those listening, I think management of your color cast is really important.
Just moving on from the color stuff. Death Valley is near where you live. It's an assault on the photographic senses. How do you break down the scene to teach guests to see shape, tone, and line?
It's the same concepts, that we were talking about before. Start off with the light. Once we see what the light is doing to the landscape, we can kind of build from there. this small scene here is actually a really good example. So we had diffused light on this one particular morning, and the dunes weren't really coming to life. With dunes, you want that nice light, that nice golden light to really show off that light and shadow play within the dunes, because that's what gives it depth. When you have more flatter light, you get more shapes. You get more shapes, if you will, but it's very subtle. You don't really have that pop. So with this particular scene here, I noticed that there was these cool little patterns in the sand that resembled mountains. And the light was diffused, but enough to kind of bring out some of the textures. So what I did here was, when I got the image into camera raw, there was a yellow cast to the image. And what I did was remove the cast, made it a little bit more neutral, and really worked those midtones just in the top, well, I'll say the middle to bottom section of the image, and just really working those darks. And what you could see is all those little lines, they just start to come out. They start to come out slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, because you're building up those adjustments. And I think what you have here is a pretty cool abstraction of sand that resembles mountains. And you have like these layered mountain looks in the sand.
Jess has got a quick question.
Yeah, what's your process for managing shadows when pushing contrast in your image?
So one of the things that I like to do is, I have the tendency to go pretty flat. We'll go flat with an image. And what I'll do is reduce that contrast. We'll open up those shadows, open up the blacks, and we have nice flat image. But what we can do is we can build all the contrast back in there. A lot of times I'll end up doing that selectively by painting on different masks, or just doing it by freehand, and being real careful with the shadows. Because the thing is with shadows is, you want to have dark shadows, not black, but dark shadows with detail. And it's a fine science, if you will, to really, get those really nice clean shadows. It takes a little bit of time, but as long as you don't go in and crush those blacks, you're good. You can really make those shadows come out.
Thank you.
Was there another question? Is there another question in the?
We can finish the slides and then get to questions
Okay.
at the end.
Yeah. Okay. So your first time tell us your first time in Namibia. Tell us
Yes.
about your recent workshop, and what are your top 3 favorite images and why?
The Namibia workshop, like I said, was such a beautiful experience. The country itself, the people, the culture, everybody is warm and welcoming. It's such a beautiful country. I can't stress it enough. Just super nice, and the landscape, so many possibilities there. I feel like Namibia is an untouched, untapped country, if you will. I know we see a lot of images from there, but just driving around, there's just so much there and so many opportunities. And I can't wait to get back next year to revisit some of these places and some of these newer ones as well.
So this is Dead Blue, for anybody who didn't know. It's very, very, very it's a very photographed place. Many photographers from around the world has photographed this. And yet you managed to find a unique angle. How did you do that here?
Again, I took my time. I completely was doing complete laps, walking in circles around this whole playa. And it was interesting to me that you see the very popular trees there, and the popular trees are great. I mean, they're awesome. But I felt that there was a lot of compositional possibilities here, and just a matter of just seeing what was there. It was one thing to see the landscape in the low flat light. The soft light was really nice. On this particular morning, we had really windy conditions. And as that sun came over that dune in the background, you start to get more of this diffused atmosphere and this diffused light. And what was so cool is you have the light bouncing off the playa and giving the trees that underglow, along with those shadows creating those nice lead-in lines. And when I saw that, I was trying to get the group's attention. I was telling Richard, I was like, guys, come here. This is really, really an amazing scene. Come. In the process of that, I also lost my camera to the wind. There was some damage there, but it was worth it. Just seeing everybody's face light up when they came upon this scene, and just the dust and atmosphere blowing around just really made this scene come to life. So that's one. This one here was at the around the Quiver Tree Forest. This particular scene was interesting to me. We didn't have clouds that came up very high on this particular morning, but we had a little bit of clouds that were kind of hanging on to the horizon. But for me, this image isn't necessarily about the sky. For me, it's about the balance and the relationship to the quiver tree and the granite boulders that are somewhat silhouetted. And you have the quiver tree catching that nice side light and has that nice glow that's just really bringing the tree to life. So for me, this is a relationship in composition of you got textured from the tree with the smooth granite boulders, and you almost have these lines that are just shooting out to the tree that just like kind of like look at me. So it's very simple, very minimalistic, but I think there's a good visual flow here, and it's kind of cool because you have like these steps in the boulder that just kind of take you up and out. So yeah. Lastly, this scene here, again, atmospheric. I love atmosphere. Anytime I can get atmosphere um, in a scene like this, I'm all about it. Again, we had super windy conditions. We had that light just coming up through the clouds and had the diffused light, and the glow that was onto the landscape was incredible. And then you have like the little God rays kind of peeking out through the top of the clouds. Super nice. I think was there a little bit of a crop done on this one, Luke?
Maybe ever so slightly, because I just realized there's a bit of a tangent happening over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. I think there was. Yeah, I think there was on the original version. There's more on the left hand side. But yes, that this scene here was one of my favorites. And just having trees within the sand dunes is just something different that you don't see, and unique to that landscape. So yeah, that was definitely a winner for me.
And you've spent so much time in the desert, in Death Valley and in the Southwest in general.
Mhm.
How did you take, have you take your experiences here in the US over there?
It's the same concepts. Like I told you, it's the same concepts. It's just a different application. So again, we're using diagonals. We're going big tree to small tree to light. It's just a diagonal going right to where the light is coming to. We've got our leading line that's leading us to the light. And it's the same concepts and same scenes. Similar conditions that I've shot, maybe a little bit different, but again, the concepts are still the same. You just apply it to a different landscape.
So you went in June and July this year.
Yes, sir.
What is different about your April trip? Why are we going in April, and what sort of experiences are people going to have?
Yeah, so the April trip conditions, those people that want those nice, dramatic, stormy scenes, that's the time to go. It'll be towards the end of the rainy season, so you'll have all the dramatic light. The foliage in the sand is in bloom, if you will. It's nice and green, so you have this nice contrast of green grass with orange sand, and that's throughout the desert landscape. So I think it's something that could be really, really interesting and really unique. I think it's something that people should definitely take a look into. And again, with the aerial stuff, that's just going to take that particular trip to just a whole nother level. So yeah,
A whole other level, up 2,000 feet in a helicopter.
right.
You have a quick question, Jess?
Sorry. Yeah, so we have a question. It says, can you talk about your thoughts on having or not a strong focal point in your images and how the scene itself might make you lean one way or the other?
Yeah, sometimes I think that I think it also comes down to like balance, and what are you trying to interpret in the landscape? Sometimes I think that there's scenes that don't necessarily have like a strong point of reference, if you will. That could be like maybe major negative space throughout the scene. But again, sometimes that negative space can help the scene breathe, if you will, and maybe shed more light to the subject. Um, I think it just really comes down to what are you trying to interpret? What is your interpretation of what you're trying to capture? I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I would approach that. Sometimes it just goes off of feeling. Sometimes it just goes off of mood. Trying to bring the elements together and flow visually, I think is our goal. But sometimes looking outside of the box and trying something different can make or break an image and how it looks and feels.
So you photographed Caddo Lake a few times, and it's all about mood and mystery. How do you approach it? I mean, it's a very short place. It's another like Dead Flea or Quiver Tree. It's a very popular place. How do you make the most of it?
Well, I mean, I think I've photographed Caddo Lake more than a few times, Luke, but I'll take a few times. Again, it's like any other tree scene, isolation, framing, conditions, a subject, someplace for our eye to go. It's an area that, man, I've been shooting now since 2015, and the conditions there are different every year. And it's this hauntingly creepy cypress forest that's beautiful and tells a lot of story, and old growth trees that are living amongst many species of birds and different plants, and it's such a great environment to photograph in.
It seems like a good place to bring back color separation. Can you
Oh
can you
yeah.
talk a bit about it in this picture?
Yeah, again, with these scenes at Caddo Lake, we're shooting fall colors, and our camera sensors have the tendency to want to push it more warm. And you'll find like you'll get really brown trunks or a lot of magenta in the trunks, and correcting that before you even get to some of the other color is very, vital to the color separation and giving the scene depth. As you can see here, one of the things that with this particular scene, it was really yellow, but those colors were like a rusty orange red, and getting rid of that yellow cast before I can even pull those colors out to even get the separation was key here. If you don't have that, then you just have a big yellow scene, and the colors don't really stand out. But you can see here, what's nice is you have the coolness of the Spanish moss against the warmness of the cypress needles on the tree. And you get that nice color separation. You get that nice color contrast that gives the scene depth. And one of the things that Jess brought up too is the shadows. If you notice, those shadows are dark, but yet there's still detail in those shadows. We don't have them dark. Same thing here. We have this nice side golden light. Now, yes, there's still some cast here, but the color cast is more managed. You can see that we have those cooler shadows with detail, not black. Nice Spanish moss swinging, not completely orange, but more of like a light yellow against the orange and red leaves. And then we have like the mix of the green and yellows in the back where the leaves haven't quite turned just yet. But again, giving it nice color separation and nice depth.
I would just want to talk a little bit about how you process this image, because you've said earlier in the chat you prefer a flat raw and then you build from there. What are like the first three moves you make when you're editing a picture like this?
So first move, temperature, white balance. We adjust those accordingly. So yes, you can see how flat that image is. Not
This is the beginning, by the way, guys. This is the
Yeah,
very,
this
very
is
beginning.
just the raw, straight out of camera, no adjustments. White balance, push the lights, adjust the shadows and darks, come back with exposure just to kind of even it out. That's the basics of what I'll do in the raw. And then if you can kind of click through, you can kind of see that's one adjustment there, or excuse me, the raw adjustments. Nothing else, no color, No contrast,
Do
nothing
you
else.
do any
Now,
vignetting? Do you add vignetting at all?
I will sometimes, but depending on the scene. This scene I didn't add vignetting because it was nice and atmospheric, so I want to really show off that atmospheric look and feel.
What
So,
what's really interesting, something I just want to point out to people is, can we talk about the top, what you did in the top left-hand corner?
oh yeah, 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 yep, yep. That's the finished image, by the way, guys, for the people that are looking at this. Um, Going back to the edits, there were no color adjustments done. I didn't have to saturate. I didn't have to add any vibrancy. These are all mid-tone contrast adjustments that I did in Photoshop. I think I did a series of 4 mid-tone contrast adjustments, stamped the layer, and then that top piece up top in that top left corner, all I did was use the warp tool, get the grid, stretched it out just to kind of fill in that top gap there. So if you go back to the original, you can see that there was that bright spot there that was the brightest spot in the image. It's on the edge of the frame, and we don't want our eye to go there. We want our eye to stay in the middle with the arrangement of trees. So getting rid of that is key to that composition holding itself together.
And there we go. People are saying that they very much like the processing of this picture.
Yeah, it's
Um,
again very subtle.
White sand is a minimalist playground. How do you help guests avoid blank spaces in their sand dunes and create intentional negative space?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to the question that you presented earlier, Jess, about not necessarily having like a clear specific subject within the landscape, and this is a perfect example of it here. White sands is it's a minimalist playground, and I actually find white sands kind of challenging to photograph, but I think that it's one of the coolest places to create really unique and different images. Here, with this particular scene, we just focus on the overlapping layers within the scene. What's so cool about this image is you can turn this image 90 degrees, clockwise, counterclockwise. You can completely flip it upside down, and you have a composition all the way through the scene. So all we're doing is just playing with the light and shadow play, and again, repeating patterns, strong use of triangles, and it's just going from front to back. So yeah, I think this is a really cool scene. I mean, for those that are watching this, if you take your laptop, if you're on a laptop, iPad, cell phone, you can just flip this image around and you'll just see multiple compositions within the scene.
And you photographed a ton in sand dunes. What's your 3-minute minimal dune drill to unlock these sorts of scenes?
3 minute minimal drill for scenes like this is: 1, light and shadow play; 2, overlapping layers; 3, lead in lines; 4, S curve if you can; 5 would be texture against smooth. That would be my quick drill. It's less than 3 minutes.
And this is not such a minimalist dune picture. Can you explain this picture for me?
Yeah, so I think what's cool here is, again, we're doing contrast, right? We have that nice gypsum sand against those small yucca plants, and you have like the vines and the coming out under the side of those yucca plants against that white sands, and you have this nice, strong contrast of elements in the scene. I just got lucky and had a little moonrise back there, and yeah, I think that the plants, you have like your framing of the moon. We got our foreground plant kind of just pushing our eye through the scene. We got a little bit of balance with the lone yucca plant and a little bit of guys scattered out on the side, so you have a nice little bit of balance there. Soft light makes those dunes really pop. Now, one of the things here, same thing. You're gonna want to photograph this scene a little bit cooler, because if it goes too warm, it'll be yellow, and then you'll have yellow sand dunes, right? So it doesn't really have that white look to it, right? So you want to make sure that you correct that in the early stages, before you get the process in.
I mean, this is another really beautiful minimalist picture. Can you talk a little bit about the backlight in this? It's wonderful.
Ah, man, again, one of my favorite conditions. Like anytime I get windy dunes, like I'm going nuts. This is like the best conditions to have anytime you shoot sand dunes. And here we have like this back kind of side lit scene with all the blowing sand in the background, creating that atmosphere and, you know, giving the scene a little bit of depth. What I did here is I just use a combination of the light and shadow play along with the overlapping layers. And we have a resting spot in the mid ground with that cool curvy dune in the middle. And then we just kind of fade out into the background. We don't need anything else back there because it's atmospheric, right? We're just trying to create some depth. But again, light and shadow play. We're using our light and shadows to kind of lead us through the scene. We pick up where the dunes overlap. We get our overlapping layers, and then we have our nice kind of squiggly S-curve lead-in line that kind of goes back out into the scene.
Wonderful. I think that's it, guys. Is there any questions, Jess?
That's it.
Yeah, I know an hour just flew
We're
by.
bang
huh?
on an hour. I was going halfway through this and I thought, I don't know if we're gonna make it.
I was just getting going. I'm sitting over here seeing that we got like 99 messages here. Like what's going on?
We do have a couple of questions. So somebody asked mud tone separations.
Midtone?
Yeah, that was Larry. Larry, and I can't find the question now, but he said, what do you do when you have mud tones? How do you separate?
How do I don't know what mud tones are, but we'll just say it's midtones, right?
I think
Um,
so.
again,
I think that's muddy tones.
oh, muddy.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Okay, yeah, I get that. Okay. Muddy tone. So if you have, unfortunately, if your tones are super muddy and how you captured it in the field is very important. So if you underexpose too much, you're going to get those muddy tones. So you want to make sure that you capture a good exposure in the field, first and foremost. And two, make sure you have light. Usually when you get muddy tones is when you don't have good light and you underexpose too much and you didn't get like a proper exposure in the field. A lot of times when you have muddy tones, you can't really correct that. That's something that you have to make sure that you do in the field.
Thank you for that. Christopher Bailey is looking forward to seeing you soon in the Olympic.
Oh, nice. Good. I'm gonna look forward to it too, Christopher.
So this person, Anne, says, I've not done much in Lightroom or Adobe. What's the best way to learn?
Dive in
Take the Mute workshop course on Lightroom. That's what you should
Yep.
do.
Dive in head first. Take the Munch Lightroom Essentials tutorial. So much information in there. It's really well done, and you will learn and pick up Lightroom pretty quick.
Yeah. One of the questions that we've been asked quite a few times is, will this be recorded? It has been recorded and it will be emailed to you within the next 24 to 48 hours. So keep an eye on your email for the list. And also, if you subscribe to our channel on YouTube, just search Much Workshops. You'll also get a notification of the recording being posted there as well. Luke?
I think that's it. Thank you very much, guys. I've really enjoyed this webinar. I've learned a lot from David, and thank you for all your great questions.
Man, you guys had some good ones. Good stuff, you guys.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys.